It started the way most nights in my neighborhood ended, quiet, predictable, wrapped in the kind of stillness that comes from a life too carefully built. Daniel had already gone to bed. The lights in our house were low, the sound of the TV fading upstairs. I was washing dishes, half asleep, when I heard the noise. Not loud, just the faint rattle of metal, the scrape of something against the gate. I froze, hands still in the sink. The street outside was dark, washed in that dull orange glow of the old lamp that never quite worked. Then I saw him. A man, moving fast but silent, his jacket soaked from the drizzle, his eyes sharp and alive. He wasn't what I expected a thief to look like, not desperate, not careless. Just calm. Intent. He looked up, and for a second our eyes met through the window. My breath caught. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He just stood there, watching me, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, as if I'd interrupted something he already owned. And then, just as quickly, he disappeared into the night. I stood there long after he was gone, the water still running, my heart pounding hard enough to echo in my ears. I should have called someone. I should have told Daniel. But I didn't. Instead, I walked to the window, pressed my palm to the cold glass, and listened. For the first time in years, the silence around me didn't feel safe. It felt alive. All night, sleep refused to come. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps, every shadow felt heavier than before. But it wasn't fear that kept me awake, it was him. That look. Those eyes that didn't run from being caught. I'd never seen confidence like that, not in the city, not in Daniel, not even in myself anymore. When morning came, I tried to shake it off. Daniel made coffee, humming some half-forgotten tune, asking about errands and deadlines. I nodded at all the right moments, smiled when he looked up. But I wasn't really there. My mind stayed outside, on the wet pavement where that stranger had stood. That evening, I found myself walking the same street, pretending to take out the trash. The rain had washed everything clean, the air smelled like iron and wet leaves. I stood by the gate longer than I should have, scanning the corners, the rooftops, the alley. Nothing. Just the hum of streetlights and the echo of my own heartbeat. Then, a sound, soft, deliberate, behind me. I turned. He was there. Leaning against the fence, hood half down, as if he'd been waiting for me to notice. For a heartbeat, the world thinned to nothing but the space between us. "You shouldn't be out here this late," he said, voice calm, low, almost amused. "Neither should you," I answered before thinking. He smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't kind at all. Maybe I'm not the one who's lost. I should have gone inside. I should have felt threatened. But I didn't. There was something disarming about him, like the danger wasn't in what he could do, but in how easily he made me forget what I should fear. He stepped closer, just enough for me to see the faint scar along his jaw, the water glistening on his hair. His eyes flicked toward the house, then back to me. "You didn't tell anyone you saw me, did you?" I hesitated. "No." "Good." The word lingered between us, heavier than it should have been. He glanced toward the end of the street, then back at me, his tone softer now. "You should go inside. It's colder than it looks." I swallowed hard, nodded, but stayed still. For one stupid, suspended second, I wanted him to stay. He turned to leave, hands deep in his jacket pockets, moving like someone who knew every escape. But halfway down the street, he looked back once more. Our eyes met again, and this time, it wasn't fear that sparked through me. It was recognition. Something in me knew this wasn't the last time I'd see him. And worse, a part of me didn't want it to be. 2 days passed, and I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all, that I'd dreamt him, the scar, the voice, the way he made the air feel charged. But then, on the third night, he came back. It was late again. Daniel was upstairs, already asleep. I was sitting in the kitchen, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, pretending to read, when I heard a soft knock, not at the door, but at the window. I froze. Slowly, I looked up. He was there, standing under the same weak streetlight, the rain tracing silver lines across his jacket. Only this time, he wasn't a stranger breaking rules. He looked calm. Certain. As if he knew I'd open the door. And I did. The air outside was sharp and cool, carrying the faint scent of smoke and rain. "You shouldn't," I began, but he interrupted, his voice low, steady. "I didn't come to take anything." He glanced around, cautious, not nervous, and then held out his hand. Something small lay in his palm, a bracelet. My bracelet. The one I'd lost weeks ago in the garden. "You dropped this that night," he said. I stared at it, speechless. "You kept it?" A faint smile tugged at his lips. "I keep things that matter." The words shouldn't have meant anything. But they did. Too much. He looked past me into the kitchen, at the warm light spilling through the window, then back at me. "You're not afraid of me," he said softly. "I should be." "Then why aren't you?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know. He took a slow step closer, close enough for me to feel the heat from his body through the thin fabric of my sweater. My breath hitched. He didn't touch me, he didn't need to. His nearness was enough to make my pulse trip over itself. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said finally. "I just wanted to see you again." I could hear Daniel turning in bed upstairs, the faint creak of the floorboards, the reminder of everything I was risking just standing there. But when I looked at the man in front of me, the thief with rain still glinting in his hair and that quiet, unspoken sadness in his eyes, fear wasn't what I felt. It was something far more dangerous. Something that whispered, "This is how it starts." The next morning, I told myself it was nothing. A stranger returning something he shouldn't have taken, that was all. I repeated it like a line from a play I'd already performed too many times. Nothing happened. Nothing will. But even as I said it, I caught myself glancing out the window, hoping to see him again. Daniel was packing for a short trip, talking about meetings and schedules. His voice filled the room, warm and ordinary. He leaned over, kissed my cheek, it should have felt grounding. Instead, it felt distant, polite. "I'll be back Friday," he said, smiling. "Drive safe," I replied, my voice steady, practiced. When his car disappeared down the street, the house fell into that strange kind of quiet that used to soothe me, until it didn't. I tried to work, to clean, to drown it out, but my thoughts kept looping back to him. The thief who shouldn't have stayed in my mind. The man who looked at me like he already knew the parts one tried to hide. That night, I sat outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, the air cool and heavy with the promise of rain. Somewhere down the road, a motorcycle engine hummed low. My pulse quickened, ridiculous. I told myself it couldn't be him. It shouldn't be. Then headlights cut across the street. The engine went silent. He walked up slowly, almost careful, as if not to startle me. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "But I saw your lights." I could have said the same thing, I should have, but I didn't. He stopped at the steps, the shadows slicing his face in half. "You always leave your door unlocked," he said. "Maybe I like to believe people are good." "Then don't test that theory on me." Something in his voice made my breath catch, a warning, or maybe a confession. He sat on the railing across from me, close enough for me to see the tiny cut near his temple, the tiredness in his eyes. "Rough night?" I asked. He gave a short laugh. "You could say that." "Stealing again?" He looked up, that half-smile returning. "Not tonight." The porch light flickered, and for a moment we were both just silhouettes, two strangers pretending this wasn't what it was. Then the rain started again, light at first, then steadier. He didn't move. Neither did I. The space between us shrank, slow and inevitable, like gravity deciding for us. When his hand brushed mine, barely, softly, I didn't pull away. Not because I didn't know better. But because, for the first time in years, I felt something real. And that was the lie I started telling myself. That feeling alive wasn't the same as doing something wrong. The rain didn't stop that night. It fell harder, louder, the kind that blurred everything, turned the world into sound and reflection. The porch light flickered once, then died, leaving us in a faint golden glow from the house behind me. He stood there, water sliding down his jacket, eyes dark and unreadable. "You should go inside," he said softly. "So should you," I answered. He hesitated, his gaze dropping for a moment before meeting mine again. "I don't have a place to go tonight." The words hung there, fragile and heavy all at once. 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind, logic, caution, the voice that sounded too much like Daniel's. But then another voice, quieter, closer, whispered, "Don't send him away." "Come in," I said, before I could stop myself. He followed, careful not to drip on the floor, his movements quiet, deliberate. Inside, the house felt different, smaller, warmer, charged. I offered him a towel, watched as he ran it through his hair, water glinting in the dim light. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For not locking the door tonight." He said it like a secret, and something in the way he looked at me made my breath catch. I poured him tea, though neither of us drank. The silence stretched, the sound of rain filling the gaps. He looked around the room, the framed photos, the books, the life that wasn't his. "It's nice here," he said. "It's quiet," I replied. "Too quiet sometimes." He leaned back, studying me. "And that's why you opened the door?" "Maybe." His eyes softened, his voice low. "You know what I am. You should tell me to leave." "I know," I whispered. And yet, I didn't. Lightning flashed, lighting up his face for a heartbeat, sharp lines, tired eyes, a faint scar catching the glow. I didn't realize I was staring until he smiled, small and knowing. "Don't look at me like that," he said. "How am I looking at you?" "Like you've already forgiven me for something I haven't done yet." The words landed deeper than they should have. He set down the untouched cup, stood slowly, and for a moment I thought he was leaving. But then he stopped, inches away. His hand brushed mine again, and this time I didn't flinch. The thunder outside cracked like an answer. I should have stepped back. Instead, I looked up. And in that breath between lightning and rain, he leaned in, close enough that the world blurred, close enough that everything else fell away. When the thunder rolled again, he was still there. And I knew neither of us would leave before the storm did. The house felt unreal that night, like the walls were breathing with us. The storm outside raged louder, wind clawing at the windows, rain hammering the roof. But inside, there was only the sound of our breathing, the soft scrape of his jacket as he pulled it off, the smell of wet air and something electric hanging between us. I should have said something, anything, to break the moment. But words had no place there. He stood close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off his skin, see the pulse in his neck. His eyes searched mine, waiting, maybe even asking, but not out loud. "I shouldn't be here," he murmured finally. "I know," I whispered. "But you are." He exhaled slowly, as if surrendering to something inevitable. I don't remember who moved first, maybe it was both of us, the same pull, the same breaking point. One step closer and everything that had been unspoken came rushing in, the fear, the want, the ache of something forbidden. When he touched my face, it wasn't rough, it was careful, almost reverent, like he didn't want to scare me away. But the moment his thumb brushed the corner of my mouth, the restraint vanished. The kiss was quiet at first, soft and trembling, the kind that asks permission even when both know it's already been given. Then deeper, slower, until the sound of rain was drowned out completely. I felt the storm pressing against the windows, lightning flashing through the curtains, his breath warm against my skin. The world outside didn't exist anymore, there was only the dark, the rain, and the way he held me like something he wasn't supposed to touch. He whispered something against my neck, I didn't catch the words, only the tone. Regret, maybe. Or need. Or both. By the time the thunder faded, we were no longer strangers. When he finally pulled back, the silence was heavier than before. He looked at me for a long time, eyes full of something I couldn't name. Then he said, almost to himself, "You'll hate me in the morning." I didn't answer. Because right then, in that stormlit stillness, I wasn't thinking about morning. Only about how alive the night suddenly felt. The storm passed, but the silence it left behind was louder than thunder. When I woke, the rain had stopped, and the house was heavy with that scent, damp air, wet earth, something else that didn't belong. The other side of the bed was empty, the sheets still warm, creased where he'd been. For a moment, I just stared. The faint imprint of his hand on the pillow, the towel I'd given him folded neatly on the chair. It was as if he'd tried to erase himself, but traces of him were everywhere, in the air, on my skin, in the space where breath used to be shared. I got up, walked barefoot across the floor, every step sounding too loud. Outside, the road was washed clean, no footprints, no proof. But I didn't need any. I remembered everything, the lightning, the way he said my name without saying it, the silence that wasn't silence at all. Daniel called around noon. I almost didn't answer. His voice was cheerful, tired, normal. He asked about the house, about the rain, about me. I lied with the ease of someone who's had practice. "Everything's fine," I said, smiling at nothing. After the call, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the world return to its rhythm. Cars passed, neighbors walked their dogs, the air smelled of morning again. But I couldn't shake the weight in my chest, not guilt, not exactly. More like gravity. Like the world was pulling me down to where last night still lived. When I stepped outside, the sky was pale blue, clouds stretched thin and innocent. I walked to the gate, the same place where I'd first seen him. The bracelet he'd once returned still hung loosely on my wrist, glinting faintly in the light. For the first time, I wondered what he'd stolen this time, and realized it wasn't something he could give back. That night, when I tried to sleep beside Daniel again, his breathing steady and familiar, I felt the rain in my mind all over again. The sound of it against the glass. The touch that didn't belong here. And in the stillness of that room, I understood. The storm had left, but I hadn't. The days after blurred together, like the world was pretending nothing had happened, and I was pretending to believe it. Daniel returned from his trip with flowers, the same routine kindness that once meant something. I smiled, said thank you, kissed him on the cheek. My voice worked. My hands didn't shake. I played my part perfectly. But every night, when the lights went out and the house went quiet, I heard it again, rain on glass, a breath too close to mine, a heartbeat that wasn't Daniel's. I started walking in the evenings, further each time. Past the edge of our street, toward the fields where the air smelled like smoke and damp grass. I told myself it was to clear my head. But deep down, I knew what I was really doing, listening. Waiting. It was on the 5th night that I saw him again. He was standing by the old fence near the orchard, hands in his pockets, as if he'd been there the whole time, knowing I'd come. For a moment, I froze. My mind screamed turn around, but my feet didn't move. He didn't either. He just watched me, that same calm, unhurried stare, the kind that made the world around us fade. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered when I finally reached him. He smiled faintly. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." "Then why do you sound like you don't want it to be?" The words hit harder than I wanted them to. He stepped closer, the night air thick between us. His jacket brushed against my arm, just that, nothing more, and still, my breath caught like I'd forgotten how to breathe. "I told you," he said quietly, "I don't steal things that people can't give." "And what if I already did?" I asked. His eyes softened, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd touch me again. But he didn't. He just looked at me, long enough for me to feel it everywhere. "You should go," he said at last, stepping back. "Before you can't." But neither of us moved. The wind rustled through the trees, the faint hum of a faraway car cutting through the silence. I thought about Daniel, about the life waiting behind those quiet walls, and how strange it felt to call it mine now. He looked at me one last time, then turned away, disappearing down the dirt road like smoke fading into air. I stood there until he was gone, until even the sound of him was gone, and still couldn't move. Because deep down, I knew the truth. He hadn't taken anything from me. He'd left something instead. The next morning, the world looked new again, sharp sunlight, clean air, Daniel making coffee, humming off key. Everything was ordinary, almost painfully so. And yet, every sound, every breath felt slightly out of sync, like my life had slipped a fraction out of rhythm. While Daniel showered, I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, pretending not to feel the weight of the night before. I opened my messages, then closed them again. I wasn't expecting anything, not really. Then I saw it. An unknown number. "You forgot your umbrella." I froze. It wasn't about the umbrella. We both knew that. I stared at the words, my pulse climbing until it was all I could hear. I should have deleted it. Should have turned off my phone, shut the door on everything that name, that memory, meant. But instead, I typed. "You shouldn't text me." His reply came seconds later. "Then why did you answer?" The phone felt heavier in my hand. The air around me seemed to thicken. Somewhere upstairs, Daniel turned off the water. I could hear the pipes hum through the walls. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't stop myself. Because I didn't want to forget. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Neither did I. I set the phone face down, my reflection catching faintly in the black screen. My hands trembled. My heartbeat wouldn't slow. When Daniel came downstairs, smiling, towel over his shoulder, I smiled back like nothing inside me had shifted. He kissed the top of my head. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just checking the weather." He laughed softly, unaware of the storm that sentence carried. Later that day, I walked past the same street where I'd first seen the thief. The wind moved through the trees like a whisper. For a second, I thought I heard footsteps, that same rhythm I'd memorized without meaning to. There was no one there. But my phone buzzed again in my pocket. "You still leave your door unlocked." And in that moment, I realized, he wasn't asking for permission anymore. He was reminding me that the line we'd crossed hadn't vanished. It had just moved closer. It happened on a Thursday. Daniel had a late shift, said he'd be home after midnight. The house was mine for a few quiet hours, or at least that's what I told myself. I made tea, turned on some music, tried to fill the silence with anything that didn't sound like memory. But the moment I heard it, that faint knock against the back door, everything inside me froze. I didn't move at first. Just listened. One knock. Then another. Slow, deliberate. I knew who it was before I even looked. When I opened the door, he was there, standing in the same shadowed corner of the porch where the rain had once hidden him. But this time, there was no storm. Just still air, heavy and warm, like the world was holding its breath. He looked different in the light. Not cleaner, not softer, just real. Eyes darker, sharper. The kind of tired that comes from running too long. "I shouldn't have texted you," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have answered," I whispered back. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, my bracelet again. I frowned. "You already gave this back." "I fixed it," he said. "The clasp was broken." He handed it to me, and when our fingers touched, the air seemed to change, that same invisible pull, familiar and dangerous. "Why are you here?" I asked. His jaw tensed. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." I should have turned away right then. But I didn't. I couldn't. He stepped closer, so close that I could feel the warmth of his breath, the faint smell of smoke and rain that seemed to follow him everywhere. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You still leave the window open," he said. "I told you to stop coming here." And yet, his hand brushed against mine again. You keep letting me in. My chest rose and fell too fast. The world narrowed, just him, the doorway, the faint hum of the refrigerator somewhere behind us. Everything ordinary felt far away. He reached up, fingers grazing the side of my neck, tracing the same line he had once before. My body leaned toward his before my mind could stop it. You'll ruin me, I breathed. He smiled faintly. I already have. The clock ticked louder in the silence. His hand rested on my cheek, and for a second, everything inside me broke in the same quiet way lightning splits the sky, sudden, blinding, unstoppable. The door was still open. The night waited outside. And somewhere, beneath all the noise, I realized the truth. I hadn't opened the door for him. I'd left it open for myself. He didn't leave right away. We stood there, too close, too quiet, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. His hand was still on my face, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to find the part of me that still wanted to stop. But that part was gone. Tell me to go, he said softly. I didn't. He leaned in, and the world tilted. The warmth of his breath brushed my skin, and suddenly everything, the house, the rules, Daniel, dissolved. There was only this, a heartbeat, a whisper, a choice already made. When he finally stepped back, neither of us spoke. His voice was low, almost tender. You'll never see me the same again. And before I could answer, he was gone, swallowed by the night he carried with him. I closed the door, locked it this time, but it was useless. The danger wasn't outside anymore. It was in me. Morning light spilled across the floor, pretending nothing had changed. Daniel made coffee, kissed my forehead, talked about plans. I smiled, nodded, practiced normal. But near the window, my bracelet waited, the one he'd fixed, left behind like a secret only I could read. I closed my hand around it, felt the cold metal warm against my skin. He was gone. And yet, somehow, he still hadn't left.